there are going to be things you need to do in order to make sure your emails are getting to where they're supposed to go. So that's what Gmail and Yahoo, they got together and they decided we're going to change how this works. They no longer want people to be able to send email and spoof who they're sending email as. Hello, I hope you are doing okay today. I wanted to drop a video about all of this new email stuff that we're hearing about. It's January 2024, and as of February 1st, 2024, Gmail and Yahoo, combined, the largest email inbox providers, are changing the game on how we email each other, at least in terms of how bulk senders or marketing emailers or people who send a lot of transactional email, people who are not, your mom or your aunt or your cousin sending one email at a time, send email. If you are, as an author, one of these people who probably uses an email service provider like MailChimp, MailerLite, ConvertKit, Klaviyo, Author Email, which is mine, that's great. You should continue doing that, but there are going to be things you need to do in order to make sure your emails are getting to where they're supposed to go. So that's what Gmail and Yahoo, they got together and they decided we're going to change how this works. They no longer want people to be able to send email and spoof who they're sending email as. Okay, that's a good thing. Like that makes it so that we can send email without having to worry about people getting email from somebody that's not us. Or on the flip side, we want to make sure that we don't get too much spam or junk email from people who want to take our money. And so what they've done is they've put together a set of criteria that is going to kick off on February 1st. They're basically flipping the switch on anyone who does not have these security features installed on their own domain. So let's jump into it. I'm going to go through these real quick and explain how to do this, how to set everything up so that you can send email without worrying about it. Okay? First of all, I mentioned an ESP, email service provider or email marketing service, whatever you want to call it. This is the MailChimp, the MailerLite, the ConvertKit, the Mad Mimi, the Email Octopus, the Author Email, the Klaviyo. All of these are email service providers that you can use to send what we call bulk or marketing emails. So this is basically just mass emails. However, every one of these very reputable providers will require you to verify your email address in order to send so that they know you're an actual person sending actual email that's not spam. So far in history of email, that has always been the case. That is not changing. So you do need an email service provider if you want to send email, okay? I recommend mine because it's mine. I built it for authors because I didn't want to pay MailChimp prices for features that I didn't need. So I put together Author Email. It's now owned by Draft2Digital. It's in what we call an open beta, which means it works great. The deliverability and the reputation is very high. Everything I'm going to talk about in this video works on Author Email's platform. It's perhaps just not as pretty or maybe as intuitive yet because we're still building out some of the user interface features, okay? So that's the only shameless sales pitch, sales plug I'll put in there for you, but I wanted you to hear, we recommend that one because it's cheap. It's the most affordable option out there. For up to 10,000 subscribers, you can send as many emails as you want for $10.99 a month. So we think it's a great option. You can have autoresponders, list signups, as many lists as you want. I mean, all the same features that you would need on any other platform without any of the customer relation management tools and options that like MailChimp and MailerLite and some of the other ones have, okay? So everything that we're going to talk about, you can use any of these services. I'm not saying you have to move, but if you want to check out Author Email, if you don't have one, go to authoremail.com and you can get signed up and try out our free trial for 30 days. Okay, so let's move on. You have an email service provider. In the past, up until now, up until February 1st, I should say, you have been able to send email from free inboxes or free email addresses like Gmail. So at gmail.com or at yahoo.com or at hotmail.co.uk, whatever it is, these are free email addresses that you can send bulk emails through. Gmail and Yahoo are changing that, okay? So they are no longer wanting us to send email from free inboxes and specifically from Gmail and Yahoo inboxes or email addresses. And so what they're requiring everyone to do, or basically the way around this, is you are now required to purchase your own domain name. Now, this freaks us out because as authors, we don't like purchasing anything. But the truth is, having your own domain name allows you a lot more options when it comes to customizing your website. You can have your own website. You can set up emails however you want. You can use Microsoft Outlook for sending and receiving personal email, but then you can use an ESP for sending and receiving the bulk email. So I highly recommend doing this anyway, because you do want your own website one day. You're an author. And this is the first step in doing that. So head over to GoDaddy or HostGator or any of these domain name registrars and pick out a domain name that's good. Hint, start with your name. Maybe that's probably a good place. So if you're Nick Thacker, go and find nickthacker.com. Can't get that one because it's mine. But go figure out what your author name is in website form. You know, add .com at the end, or maybe .info, probably not .biz or one of the other weird ones. Just keep it simple. Go with a .com. Those are the most affordable option a lot of times, but you're probably talking anywhere from $5 to $15 a year. So this is really, really, really affordable, and you don't have to also purchase a website with it. If you don't have a website and don't have any interest in doing it, setting a website up, don't worry, you don't need to. But you do need a domain in order to send email from that domain. So go purchase your own domain, and usually whatever service you use will walk you through how to do that. They'll probably try to upsell you to like privacy control and things you don't need. Just click no on all those things. Get to the end, set up an account where you can get automatically billed every year, and within seconds you'll have your own fresh domain name. Okay? Now the next step is where it gets a little more technical. That domain name, that address, we type into a URL bar when we go to any browser, right? And that tells the internet tubes how to connect that name to whatever that goes to. That's called your website. If you don't have one of those, that's fine. You can still use it to send email, because that name is actually a collection of all these records that basically send traffic to different places. So if you are sending email on that domain, so yourname@yourname.com would be the email address for yourname.com, the domain. The MX records, or mail exchange records, are like secretly part of that domain name, and they will tell all of the emails where to go. The A record is an IP address, which is basically where your website lives. So you hit that name, yourname.com, it looks for the A record, and that is where it will go and find your website if there is one. What we're setting up are records that live underneath that domain. So when you go to GoDaddy, for example, and purchase your domain name, you can then go into your domain's settings and find a panel called DNS, or Domain Name Server Settings, DNS settings, whatever you want to call it. These are where your name servers live. So right now they're parked, which means there is no website, but that domain points to a landing page at GoDaddy. Those are ns1.godaddy.com, probably an ns2.godaddy.com, or whatever your host is. Again, these are just examples of records that live underneath your DNS settings. So when you get into your DNS settings, and I'll show you what this looks like, you'll be able to change or add different records. What we're doing is using these records to tell the World Wide Web that you are who you say you are when you send email through another provider. Okay? That's all we're doing. Gmail and Yahoo are only doing what we've been always able to do. They're just now requiring it. Okay, so we've always been able to set up this type of security. We've always been able to set up this type of record, these three types of records, I should say. And they're just saying, hey, you need to do this now. So you can't do it if you have a free inbox, which is why we have to get our own domain. I hope that makes sense. So let's get into GoDaddy, and I'll show you what this looks like. So assuming you've already purchased your domain, you can see here on my screen, this is my personal website, nickthacker.com, and you're going to see under this menu bar up here, it says Overview, DNS, and Products. We're going to click on DNS Records. It's going to take us to this page where we have a whole list of records. Now, I've got multiple pages of these because I've been using this domain for many different things, and all these records can live and usually coexist nicely with each other. What you're going to do is get into these records. You're going to click this Add New Record button. You don't need to do this yet because you don't know what the record is, but I'm just showing you where it lives. And each record you create is going to be a particular type. So remember I said A records, MX records are your mail exchange records. So I use Microsoft Exchange, which is, Outlook. That's how all their emails run on an Exchange server. So I just put those server settings into an MX record, and that tells people when they email anything at nickthacker.com, it's going to look for these MX records. It's going to look for this mailbox on some server. So that's an MX record. You have all sorts of records, either the name servers I mentioned, where this domain name lives, essentially. What we're going to be playing with today are TXT records, which is just text, and CNAME, which is like an alias. It's just telling you, hey, there's a record here that needs to do something. And so when we click on that, these names sometimes will change. Sometimes you'll see name or host, and sometimes value will be details or data, for example. It doesn't matter. There's usually just two. And so in the name field, a lot of times you put the @ symbol to just reference the overall domain. It's kind of self-reference. So it's saying, hey, this is just nickthacker.com in this case. The value is the important part. This is going to be like the key or whatever the string, it says literally string of characters is that we type in. You'll see what all this means later. I just wanted to show you this to familiarize yourself with it. And then over here, you don't really need to worry about this at all. This is time to live. It's essentially how long it's going to update or how long it takes to update or change or, be pulled actually. So the first step, if you go to Author Email's website and click on our knowledge base, I've got an article that for each one of these different records. So I don't have one for DKIM, and I'll explain why. But if you want to add an SPF record to your domain, if you want to add a DMARC policy to your emails, I'm going to explain what each of these mean very quickly because these are the 3 records you need. SPF is a sender policy framework record. This essentially just says, hey, I am who I say I am, and I approve this message that you're getting in your inbox coming from whatever server that you're sending it from. Okay, and then the recipient, the person receiving the email, their envelope or their headers inside an envelope, which is email, right? So it's like mail. There's literally a thing called an envelope, and the headers are inside that, and they're all hidden, and you can't usually see them. The internet service provider and then the email service provider will read those headers and make sure that you are who you say you are. The sender is who they say they are, and they use, among other things, the SPF record to show that. This is very simple to set up. Once again, you would do a TXT record. You would use this as the name or whatever your provider gives you, and then your value would be V equals SPF1, and then all this other stuff that I'll show you in just a second. Don't worry, we're getting there. Okay, the second record you're going to want to set up is what's called DKIM signing. Or domain identifier, what does it stand for? I can't remember. Something, domain key identifier marking or something like that. DKIM signing is the same sort of deal. It's a security policy that says, hey, I've got this public key that I'm sending email from, and then somewhere this email is originating from, hidden on the internet somewhere, is a private key that the recipient gets to match against it and make sure that everything checks out, and therefore we know that you are who you say you are. So this is just another version of setting up a security policy on your domain that says, I am who I say I am. Now, this is a little more complicated to set up because it implies and therefore requires that you have a third party sending email on your behalf. So this is where MailChimp, MailerLite, Author Email, whoever would come in. In our case, you would need to email us and say, hey, I'm sending email from this email address. I'm using your platform. Can you set up DKIM signing records for me? And we would say, absolutely. So we manually will go add your domain and say, please generate the DKIM public and private keys that they need. And we click a button, it downloads the CSV file, and then we will send you that. And the CSV file looks like this. It's just a collection of records. And there's usually 3. This is from Amazon SES, so this is one format of the records. You would need another one from our other email service provider, or our other delivery server, which is Elastic Email right now. The point is, whatever delivery servers are emailing on your behalf, you need to have DKIM signing set up for those. Now, every third-party ESP that I know of handles this for you. They'll give you the record. You still have to do the work, and I'll show you how, but they're going to generate these for you. So you'll get a CSV file with the records from Amazon SES, and we will give you either the records or a CSV file with the proper information for Elastic Email. Okay, I'm not going to show you right now because I'm going to talk about the third one, but we will go through each of these and I'll show you how to set these up, so don't worry, hang with me. The third thing you need is what's called a DMARC policy. Now, this is essentially the third thing you would set up. It has to be last because it checks that either SPF records are there or DKIM are there, or both. Sometimes you can have it require both. And then it just says, okay, checks out, this person is who they say they are. And if you read this article that I've put together, it explains what each one of these components are. You can see right here, DMARC relies on 2 established email authentication techniques, which we just talked about, SPF and DKIM. You have either one of these, and DMARC policy is going to say true, pass. Okay, it's going to give you a pass. Or it'll say, hey, there's neither one of these set up, fail. And most likely, that email will not go to where you want it to go. You can choose where you'd like it to go by setting up your policy enforcement. So none means just send the email and hope for the best. Quarantine means place the email in the recipient's junk or spam folder automatically, and reject means block it from delivery altogether. Okay, so this is how we would basically make sure we're saying, hey, I am who I say I am because of these two things, and if it passes this, then treat the email the way you'd want it to be sent and get through to the right places. This policy is in place to make sure that anyone trying to spoof our domain or spoof, sending as us doesn't work. Okay, so don't worry about the details here and the technical underpinnings of all this. Just know that now you got to do this. Now you have to set this thing up, okay? It's all very simple because there are tools that do this automatically. The one I recommend is totally free. It's called DMARC. So it sets up your SPF record, your DKIM record, and your DMARC record. Now, I recommend clicking this third option down to this last one, SPF, DKIM, and DMARC wizard, and it will guide you through this process one step at a time. And you can just watch me do this. So I click my domain, first of all, and then click next. And then you get into the SPF record generator. So this is very, very simple. For our purposes, we don't need either of these. The MX records are a whole separate thing, and the A record's a whole separate thing. We just want the SPF record. We don't need to worry about IPv4 or 6 addresses. Our host names, don't have to worry about those. But we do want to include the delivery servers that we're using. So again, my email I send through author email. And author email, if you go back to my knowledge base article here, you can see there are two that you need to add in. And those two records are Elastic Email and Amazon SES. Those look like these domains here. Elastic Emails is _spf.elasticemail.com, and Amazon is amazonses.com. Very simple. And so we would go back to our third-party site, and we would put a space in between them, and then we would add the second one. And the policy, we can either say neutral, non-compliant emails are rejected. Probably soft fail is a good safe middle. They're accepted, but they're going to get marked. Again, we're hoping that these will pass and the recipient will get it and not know the difference. It's going to be perfectly fine because it's really from us. By having this set up this way, we're basically saying if something does go wrong, let's do a soft fail so we can see what's up with them. Anyway, then we click generate, and you'll see right here we get a record. And all we need to do is copy this and paste it into our DNS settings under a TXT record. Again, we're going to just keep that at there, and we're going to paste that whole thing in here, okay? Now, sometimes if you use another tool, I like DMARC, like I said, but there are plenty of other tools that can generate SPF records. Make sure they don't add in quotes. Make sure that if you do get like an underscore character as part of your server's record, you keep that kind of stuff in there. You just want it to be exactly the same as the way you got it, unless there shouldn't be quotes around. Sometimes they'll put under the includes quotes. So this is what your record will look like. I'm not going to save mine because I already have this record installed, but I did want to point out one more thing. In this article, at the very end, you'll see, and there's another article down here you can read on multiple records, but if you have another service provider, like you're using MailChimp and MailerLite and Author Email for whatever reason, those are 3 at minimum different delivery servers, and sometimes more. So sometimes, Author Email uses 2, sometimes 3, and so you need to make sure you add all of those into your record. All you have to do is put another include and then a colon and then the record. And all of that has to happen before the all tag at the end. So I could literally add another record just by doing include otherrecord.com, press a space, and all of these will get included. And they will all validate correctly in another sense. So if I'm sending from otherrecord.com, then they will be validated correctly as SPF record. I want to note, I believe the limit is you can have 10 different servers here, includes here in this value, and that's why I wrote this other article. If you need to add more than that, you can actually split it up. I'm not going to get into the details of that, but you can split it up between multiple records, essentially, if you need to have more SPF records, delivery servers mentioned, that kind of thing. Okay, that's it. For SPF, that's all you need to do. Okay, you can play with these, you can research these if you need to. DMARC has a great article on what each one of these things is, but don't worry about it. That's all you need to do. and you'll be set up with that. Next is it shows you how to publish these records, but I'm showing you that as well. The next one is going to be the DKIM record. Okay, remember the DMARC record has to happen third because we need these first two in place before. This one gives you an example directly from SendGrid, which is another email service provider, kind of a delivery service. Yours will be different because you'll be doing author email or MailerLite or MailChimp, in which case you go to each of those places, search for how do I do DKIM signing or authentication, and give me those records. And they will have a process for giving you those records. We have that process as well. As I said, we'll send you a CSV file. It's going to have 3 records on it. It looks like this. And you're literally just going to say, okay, great. I know it's a CNAME. I'm going to copy the name and I'm going to copy the value and for each one of them. And then you're going to post them. I'm going to change this, right? So you set up a new one and then the name would be this and the value would be this and you're done. You do that for each of the records. So you can do, with GoDaddy, you can do multiple at a time. So I can add all 3 of these, where'd it go? All 3 of these CNAME records in one fell swoop on GoDaddy. So great, easy way to do this. Make sure you get all this right. The value should have the Amazon SES at the end. Now, these are the 3 for Amazon SES. Now, I would also need to do this for Elastic Email. And again, Author Email will send you 2 sets of records. One for Amazon SES is one of our delivery servers, and our other delivery server that we're currently using is Elastic Email. So you'll get 2 sets of records, and this is just one set. Okay, hope that makes sense. It seems like a lot of work, but really it's just a lot of copy paste. Okay, you'd save all these records. Again, keep the time to live the same. Doesn't really matter. If you really wanted to, you could go down to like 600 seconds. I think is the minimum, 5 minutes, and you're good to go. 10 minutes. Sorry, I don't know what that is. Then you are all good to go. Your DKIM signing. When you send an email through that service provider, it's going to be delivered either through, in this case, Amazon SES or Elastic Email, and the recipient's email account will look and say, okay, this is signed properly. It says you're allowed to send through Amazon SES and or Elastic Email. Great, this passes. So the third thing we're going to do, the third thing Gmail and Yahoo are going to require starting February 1st is to have this DMARC record. This one, again, shows you how to publish them. And once again, the DMARCly is the best tool I've found because it does all 3 of these very, very simply. You can set a policy. We'll talk about that in a second. You can set aggregate emails, forensic email addresses, subdomain policy, blah, 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 blah. So these are a bunch of buttons you can check, and it will generate a policy record. You can see the basic record here without anything in it is right here. Here's what we need to worry about. When you first set up this record, you want this to be none. What this means is it's going to send you some emails, depending on what email you put in this box. If you want to put one in the forensic box, you can see it says, go away, send forensic reports to this generated email address. So basically when something fails, you'd get a forensic report. The aggregate just tells you what happened. So I like putting the aggregate email address in and not the forensic one. Make sure it's an actual email address. It can be the same one as the one you're putting the same domain as the one you're building it for. If you press generate, you'll see it adds this RUA. If you want to know what that means, you can go over to my, where'd it go? Document that I created on DMARC policy. And I've just listed out what each of these all means. So under DMARC, you've got the policy. This is the overall, what do you want to have happen when an email doesn't pass this DMARC evaluation? You can do nothing, which is what we're starting with. You can quarantine, which means we're going to put all these emails, any email that didn't pass, into this box, and you'll get an email notification about it maybe once a week. Or you can just flat out reject the email and they never see it. Usually we want to use none for these early reports, at least at the beginning, and then maybe change it to quarantine after you've set it up and see it working for a while. What you get is this aggregate report. This is RUA is the flag that we use when we build a DMARC record. So RUA equals and then some email address. Okay, you can see the typical format is here. This is just how you specify where do these cumulative reports go. It doesn't have to be the same email address that you want to use. Maybe you want to use something like RUA@yourdomainname.com. Really doesn't matter. It gets a little more technical. If you're kind of a nerd that wants to read that stuff, then you can start digging in. I just usually leave it as my same email address and we're good to go. Forensic reports, this is similar to the previous one, but basically it's just kind of when things don't work out the way we want a special report. I don't usually get this report for my DMARC because I don't care. And you can go on and read through all these and see if there's anything else here that you want to add in this particular wizard. Now, I usually will start, if a new domain, a new email address, I'll start with my policy of quarantine, because this will allow all the emails that aren't supposed to get through to still be, I can still see them. They'll get quarantined and sent to me under this aggregate email address, and I'll get to, kind of go through them. Once you get your policy up and running and you know things are working and you're getting the right emails, you can just flat out reject any email, basically saying anyone who's trying to spoof me, I don't even need to know, just don't let it through. This is a more strict policy, of course, but it just kind of cuts down on the emails you get in response. And then finally, you're supposed to have an email address in here, but you will get emails all the time if you put an email address in there. So either use one that you don't have to check very often. Don't use your main email address, for example, or you can get away with not putting one at all. Typically, though, that's not a correct setup of this. You do want to have an email address in one of those forensic or aggregate boxes, because that's the ISPs sending the email and handling the DMARC stuff. They want to be able to send the report back somewhere. The problem is they just usually do it every single day. And so every night you would wake up, every morning you'd wake up to a bunch of new emails that don't make any sense because they're all XML files. So the point is, I usually would use something like, rua@nickthacker.com or, box@nick. It doesn't matter. Just it's a fake email address that I've set up solely to collect these reports. But then press generate, and this is the record you will type in or copy paste in, and it shows you on the next step how to do that. But it's a TXT record again. I believe you can set this up as a CNAME as well, but you need another flag. But for our intents and purposes, which is what we're going to do, we'll delete these, get rid of all these. We don't need these either. So we set up a TXT record, text record, and our value is going to be this new policy that was generated for us. And the host is just going to be _ DMARC. Okay? So instead of the @ symbol here, we're going to say _ DMARC. This is just sort of the default standard that everybody uses. So when you send an email, it looks at your domain, it's going to see all these records. It's going to go, oh, here's a DMARC policy. And then it reads in the value what the policy is. All these little flags are the ones that we set up in this wizard tool in the previous step. So automatic TTL, you can keep that the same. As I said, click add record, and then you're done. That's all you have to do. Now, it's worth noting, DNS propagation takes up to an hour. I usually find that it happens pretty quickly, 5-10 minutes maybe. It can happen. It can take up to 24 to 48 hours in old school systems, but it's generally going to be under an hour. But once you're done doing all three of these different things, you want to go back and verify that things are working. So if you go back to DMARC, you can use one of the tools and check your records. So each one is a separate one. So you want to go to the SPF record checker and type in your domain, click check, and it will give you a success if you've done this correctly. Now remember, if it gives you a fail, it doesn't mean that you failed. It means that it may not have propagated yet. So just pause, go get another beverage, wait an hour, and then try it again. Then if it fails, try to figure out what's going on. But usually it will give you a reason why it failed, or if it can't find it at all, it's a propagation error. But this tool is really, really helpful. You can use other things like mxtoolbox.com. There's plenty of free ways to check this stuff and get it all set up. Go back to the tools and do that for each of the records. You can go to the tools, what page am I on? Tools page here at DMARC. Check your SPFs, check your DKIM, check your DMARC, and then there's the wizard we just did. The BIMI record checker is another type of record you can have on your domain. It's not really for security. It's more for like an image that I can't remember what it stands for. But if you click the wizard here, yeah, it's basically sending it's like your logo. No one is requiring this yet, but it's good to know that this is available. So if you want to do this, again, it's free and just requires the same sort of setup that we did before, only this time with an image like your logo. It just kind of makes your domain more official to certain providers. Again, it's not a requirement though. And that's about it. The blacklist checker I find very helpful because there are services out there that will list your domain if it's blacklisted. Now this can happen for numerous reasons, like you are on shared hosting. Your domain name lives on a box with 500 other websites that are all sharing a hosting account. That's what shared hosting means. And some of those are unscrupulous providers, maybe Russian spam bots or Chinese spies or whatever. And the whole box will get marked as bad, as blacklisted by these services. And so you want to go through this list every now and then, especially if you're seeing that you are finding, your deliverability, your reputation is going down. It's probably not your service provider's fault. It could be that you've got listed on one of these services. And if you do, it's a little bit annoying to get off, but you just have to find out who they are, type this in, copy paste it, go reach out to them and say, hey, I'm listed. I shouldn't be. Please take me off. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it's just a matter of time before it releases that again. But usually this is associated with your IP address that lives on that A record we talked about. So there is a way, if you are listed and you can't get off of one of these lists and you think it's affecting your deliverability, there is a way to go and change your IP address. You can go purchase what's called a dedicated IP address. Costs a little bit more money per year, but it's worth it, I think. And the best way of all is to put that website that you have on something besides shared hosting. Put it on dedicated hosting where you have your own box or your own virtual server on a box. And it's more isolated from these unscrupulous providers that may take the whole town down with them. Hope this all makes sense. I know this is kind of a more technical video. Hope you made it through your beverage with me all right. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm eminently findable online. Go check out Author Email if you don't have a service provider. I do believe it's the best one out there. It's certainly the most affordable. And we're doing some really cool stuff this year. I hope you're with us. But if not, I hope this helps for whatever platform you're on. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.